Welcome to On This Day in Tudor History with me, Claire Ridgway, getting some sunshine today out on my roof terrace, getting some fresh air. Now, where am I taking you today? Well, I'm actually taking you to the Stuart period, but it's about a Tudor man. For on this day in history, the 6th of April, 1621, Edward Seymour, 1st Earl of Hertford, died at Netley in Hampshire. He was about 81 years old at his death, and he was laid to rest in Salisbury Cathedral. Now, this Earl of Hertford is known for secretly marrying Lady Katherine Grey, who was the sister of Lady Jane Grey, Queen Jane. And Catherine was also a claimant to the throne. He married her secretly in 1560, and this secret marriage was something which led to them both being thrown into the Tower of London. But what lots of people don't know is that after this secret marriage and after Catherine's death, Hertford went on to marry twice more, and both of those were secret marriages too. So he was a bit of a secret husband. But let me tell you a bit more about this Tudor man. Edward Seymour was born in around 1539, and he was the son and heir of another Edward Seymour, Duke of Somerset, and his second wife, Anne Stanhope. Now, our Edward, his father, had two sons by his previous marriage, but he'd repudiated his first wife, Catherine Filial, and those sons had been disinherited. Our Edward's father served as Lord Protector in King Edward VI's reign until he was brought down from power and executed. Edward's father's lands and titles were declared forfeit. Our Edward was made a ward of the crown until his mother, Anne Stanhope, was released from the Tower of London in Queen Mary I's reign. When Elizabeth I came to the throne, Edward's father's lands were restored to him, and he was made Baron Beauchamp and Earl of Hertford. In late 1560, Edward secretly married Lady Katherine Grey, daughter of Queen Elizabeth I's cousin, Frances Grey, previously Frances Brandon, Duchess of Suffolk. And as I said, she was an heir to the throne, a claimant to the throne. Hertford was recalled from a diplomatic mission to France in August 1561 because his wife, who was pregnant by this time, had confessed her secret marriage to Queen Elizabeth I's favourite, Robert Dudley. The couple were imprisoned in the Tower of London, where on the 24th of September 1561, Catherine gave birth to their son, who was also named Edward. I just love the fact that these Tudor people are so creative with their names. Edward Seymour, yes. The marriage was ruled invalid by an ecclesiastical high commission in May 1562, making little Edward illegitimate. Sir Edward Warner, who was the lieutenant of the Tower of London, felt sort of sorry for the couple, and he allowed them conjugal visits. And of course, this resulted in Lady Katherine Grey, who's now Catherine Seymour, going on to give birth to another son. And this son was called Thomas, and she gave birth to him in February 1563. She gave birth in the Tower. Hertford was fined 15,000 by the Crown for, the fact that he'd got his wife pregnant while they were both in the Tower of London. Following the birth of his second son, Hertford was prevented seeing Catherine, and they actually never saw each other again. Catherine was eventually released from the Tower of London, but into house arrest, and she was never actually free. She died in under house arrest in 1568. Hertford was released from the Tower in August 1563, but into the custody of his mother Anne and her second husband, Francis Newdigate, at their home at Hanworth. He ended up in the Tower again, though, unfortunately, although it was only temporarily, after his stepfather was implicated in helping John Hales, who wrote a pamphlet defending Hertford's wife, Lady Katherine Grey's, claim to the throne. In 1571, Hertford was allowed back at the royal court, and it was there that he met the woman who'd become his second wife, Frances Howard. She was a gentlewoman of Elizabeth I's privy chamber, and she was the daughter of William Howard, of Lord William Howard of Effingham. It is not known actually the precise date when they got married, because it was a secret wedding, but John Dee referred to Frances as the Countess of Hertford in 1578, and the Queen gave her permission for the marriage, even though it had already been done, in 1585. In 1581, his eldest son, Edward Lord Beauchamp, secretly married Honora Rogers. And you think these secret marriages ran in the family. And our Edward, Earl of Hertford, rather hypocritically, I feel, would not accept this secret marriage and actually had his son taken into custody at Hertford House. Queen Elizabeth I and her council, however, sided with Beauchamp and Honora, and Hertford was forced into accepting his son's marriage. Good for the Queen and the council. In 1591, Queen Elizabeth I visited Hertford and his wife at their home Elvertham in Hampshire. And in late 1595, early 1596, Hertford ended up in the Tower of London once more. He must have grown very accustomed to being in the Tower, but only for a couple of months after he supported his younger son Thomas's appeal against the ruling that had deemed his parents' marriage invalid. In 1598, Hertford's second wife, Frances, died. Their marriage had been childless. And in 1601, Hertford married again, another woman called Frances. This Frances, she was also Frances Howard. She was daughter of Thomas, 1st Viscount Howard of Bindon, and she was a wealthy widow. She'd been married to Henry Pranall, and she was just 22 years old, and Hertford was in his early 60s by this point. They married in secret at Hertford House. The marriage was childless. On the death of Queen Elizabeth I in 1603, Hertford supported the claim of King James VI of Scotland, rather than promoting the claim of his son, Edward Lord Beauchamp, who of course was a claimant to the throne because of his mother being Lady Katherine Grey. And because of his support of King James's claim, our Earl of Hertford went on to gain favour in James I's reign. He served him as an ambassador and also as High Steward of King James's wife, Queen Anne's revenues. King James I honoured the Earl of Hertford with visits at Tottenham Lodge in Wiltshire in 1603, 1617 and 1620. In 1608, due to Hertford's favour with the king, King James gave Hertford's son Edward the right to inherit the earldom of Hertford. He was still officially deemed as illegitimate, though. In 1610, Hertford's grandson, William, secretly married. These secret marriages, so many of them. He secretly married Lady Arabella or Arbella Stuart, who was daughter of Charles Stuart, Earl of Lennox, and of his wife Elizabeth Cavendish. Both William and Arabella were claimants to the throne, and so their marriage, their secret marriage, bringing these two claimants together, led to them being imprisoned. William was able to escape his imprisonment and he fled abroad, but Arabella remained in the Tower of London and she died in the Tower in 1615, a very sad story. Although Hertford was angry with his grandson, hypocrite, he did give him an annual allowance while he was in exile abroad. And in 1612, William became Hertford's heir after the death of his father, Lord Beauchamp. Hertford acted as a patron of the arts, and he also had a company of players. That's just an aside for you there, some trivia. He died, as I said, on this day in 1621. His grandson William had the remains of Lady Katherine Grey moved from her resting place at Yoxford in Suffolk to Salisbury Cathedral to be buried with her husband, the Earl of Hertford, in Salisbury Cathedral. And the tomb of Hertford and Catherine can still be seen today in Salisbury Cathedral in the south aisle. Catherine's effigy is placed higher than that of her husband Hertford to reflect her royal status. And the inscription, which is written in Latin, translates to incomparable consorts who experienced in the vicissitudes of changing fortune at length in the concord which marked their lives, here rest together. Now, also on this day in Tudor history, the 6th of April 1590, Queen Elizabeth I diplomat, secretary, advisor and spy master Sir Francis Walsingham died. And you can find out more about this fascinating man, the man that Elizabeth I called her Moor, in last year's video, which I'll give you a link to. Thank you for joining me and bearing with me messing around with my notes and the breeze and cats and everything. You can subscribe by clicking round about there. You can hit the bell to be notified as these videos go live. You can, of course, give me a like and leave a comment. Thank you. See you tomorrow. Bye-bye.